Well, happy Saturday, folks. It's the real Captain Kirk here. We're live from One Bethlehem Plaza here in downtown Bethlehem, Pennsylvania here today. Lot to talk about here today, but as anyone's been following us for the past 22 years knows that we project year-ahead weather. I know that sounds crazy using lots of statistics, trillions upon trillions of them, math, climate cycles to project temperature and snow a year ahead by week, by mile, everywhere on Earth. That's 32 million spots, but in any event, we can use that technology not only to predict the thousands of seasonal categories we help our big retail customers with, but also project potential calamities. Again, as we're going from a 3-year La Niña cycle into the Strong El Niño, and we believe back to La Niña again this time next year. So this rapidly evolving weather pattern is going to lead to a lot of chaos for sure. Again, we believe it'll be the worst billion-dollar disaster year in 7 years, somewhere north of about $288 billion. This year was an off year. We only had about $68 billion in damages across the U.S. An average year would be closer to about $135 billion. So again, that's all we have to say about that for now. But again, a lot of these hurricanes, floods, wildfires, tornadoes, hail, damage claims will be a big year in 2024. Starting to see the polar vortex come to life here. Again, it's a little bit ragged toward the end of here. It's not completely symmetrical, but the weaker it is, the more likely to get an intrusion of really cold air. And we actually see that as we get into the front half of November. Another factor you can look at is just what's happening in Siberia with snowfall. And under La Niña, the 3-year was very dry across Russia, below average rain and snow. This 30-day outlook here again for through October 31st here shows a lot of snow for Siberia. In fact, potentially the most in 10 years, taking us back to 2013. And if anybody remembers 2013, it was a pretty big seasonal snowfall season here in the U.S. In fact, near record for some areas. So again, now that's what we're up against. Right now, again, season to date here in the U.S., snowfalls where people live, 260 major cities that we track, not much, way below average, at least in 13 years. Good news here, if you like snow, again, starting to see an uptick here, again, 21 October through 4 November, the most in 3 years. So more average conditions here. We'll see some cold air coming down here for, again, right after the Halloween period. Look at tornadoes and hail damage, again, polar opposite here to some extent. Tornadoes are up, most in 4 years, about 9% above average, and chart right here is hail. Hail weather, there's been 6,800 plus cases of hail this year. That's actually below average by about 8%. So next year we actually project tornado season to be the worst in 13 years. Hail also likely to be up. Look at the last week world summer here. Again, this is ending here today, 21 October. Here in the U.S., it was an unfavorable week, unfortunately, for our retail seasonal customers. 4.5 degrees warmer than last year, warmest in 6 years, 6 warmest in 38 years, so above average on that front. While 7% wetter, wettest in 3 years, it was still 8th driest of the past 38 years, so well below average. And snowfall pretty much non-existent where people live, least in 7 years, tied for number one least. Still very, very dry there in Australia, getting concerned about their spring here. Been driest in 29 years for Australia, so that's concerning as they go into their spring, summer season. Again, El Nino has not been a typical, so anytime government tells you El Nino means this, that's not the case because we should not have had one of the most active seasons in the Atlantic with 20 named systems this year. So that's not typical of El Nino, and that's why every El Nino is different. So we're not fans of their winter outlook that just came out here this past week. We have Tammy out there, number 20. We'll see if Hurricane Tammy is going to make this right turn. Cold front that's sweeping off the east coast here today may steer it far off into the Atlantic. If it doesn't catch it, Tammy can make a left turn here back toward the United States. So something to watch with Tammy. She's impacting the British Virgin Island areas, again, a little bit, and the Windward Islands here today. We'll look at this week, last week of October, and the last week of Q3 here for retailers. Unfavorable, unfortunately, 2.6 warmer than last year, warmest in 23 years, second warmest in 38 years, so very unfavorable for seasonal sales. Also dry, 8% drier than last year, driest in 7, 19th, wettest in 38, so near average. Again, got some signs of that cold coming down in Montana and snow. It's probably overdone there, but in the high elevation, can certainly see well over a foot and a half. And a conveyor belt of moisture. They don't want it during harvest season, but again, they need it in this some of these drought-stricken areas of the central U.S. Looking at next week, again, telltale signs here that the front half of November, as expected a year ago, we said the front half would be the cold spot, one of the second coldest periods of the entire late fall winter season in terms of year-on-year changes for retail sales. So a strong week for sure. 7.5 degrees colder than last year, 19th coldest in 38 years, below average. So again, a lot of the country here will get some colder weather. We've added the snow index chart here down below. 41% more snow than last year, snowiest in 4 years, 18th snowiest in 38 years. So about average. Again, a lot of that snow will be confined to the Rockies and northern plains where not a lot of people live, but a sign of things to come. 14% wetter than last year, wettest in 5, 10th wettest in 38. So cold, wet, snowy. Again, those are good, strong retail seasonal sales. So it should be a very, very strong week. We actually are projecting it to be the second strongest weeks in terms of year-over-year sales gains for our retail customers, even including all the way through January. So again, this will be one of the strongest weeks of November, December, January in terms of retail seasonal sales gains. If we just aggregate these World 2-week outlook trends again today through the 4th of November, again, a little misleading. Canada's gone from number one hottest to pretty cold here as we get into the next week period here. And that cold will, again, erode the warm weather in the U.S. We've got a warm week going to a cold week, so it doesn't totally capture that trend here. Still pretty dry there in Australia, in fact, very dry. Cold spot there, and again, parts of southwest Russia. Another sign of things to come here, again, not here this weekend, but in about 2 weeks, daylight saving time ends. And we saw our geese, these were Canadian geese, heading south here today, here in eastern Pennsylvania. So another sign that they know something's up, cold weather's coming. As you can tell here, our fall is not that spectacular. Again, we had a beautiful fall last year with the dry conditions. More dry conditions tend to make prettier fall color. So because it wasn't spectacular this year, because it was extremely wet summer after a very dry spring into a very wet summer here in eastern PA. So some color, leaves are coming down. We're definitely past peak here in eastern PA outside of 360's headquarters. But with that, folks, have a great week, and we will be back here again this time next week.